What up everybody, Colton Nerdcore back out with another video. This one's going to be the top 10 games I played through in 2020. This video was originally supposed to be a top 10 games that came out in 2020, but I realized I don't play a lot of games that come out in whatever the current year is, because I usually wait for games to go on sale because I don't like playing full price, honestly. So this video will cover the games I finally went and played through fully in 2020. It won't count games that I'm like partially through, it'll count games I fully finished. This video will hopefully just be to shine a light on a couple of great games that I played and hopefully give a couple shout outs to some games that came out in 2020, because I did play some games that came out last year that I was really excited for. Some of those have made the list, and then a lot of them are just games that came out in like 2018, 2019, or even earlier. So hopefully this will just be an interesting video to talk about some games, and if you have any games that you guys played through in 2020, let me know, and I'm sure to add it to some sort of list. I'm always looking for good games to pick up for a decent price, so definitely let me know if there's some that maybe I missed out in 2020 that will go on sale this year, or games that I haven't mentioned in any of my videos you've seen and just want to give a quick shout out. Alright, so without further ado, let's just get right into the video. Alright, so first up, a lot of these games are going to be PS4 games. Because with the PS5 coming out, a lot of the games that were a little overpriced for me on the PS4 are starting to mark their way down because they're slowly clearing out PS4 stock in certain stores to make more room for PS5 and the new Xbox Series X or whatever it's called. So a lot of the games for the PS4 will slowly be moving off shelves, so that's the perfect time for me to pick up some games for a good discount. So the first game I got is a PS4 game. It's a fighting game that partly through the year, I think it was in the summer, I got a real itch to play a new fighting game. So I picked up Dead or Alive 6. Dead or Alive is a series I've played one or two of. I've played the one that's on the Vita, I think it's 5, if I'm not mistaken, with all the DLC or the complete edition or whatever. But I got 6. It's a decent fun. The mechanics are still the same and really well done. It's one of those 3D fighting games onto 2D on like one plane fighting game. Very much heavy focused on a mix of grapples and slow juggle combos is what I usually get the vibe when I'm playing this game. I did play it a little bit online. The online's pretty smooth. I didn't have any connection issues or any real latency problems with the servers, and there's still people playing currently. The campaign was okay. It's basically as basic as the Dead or Alive campaign goes. It's a little confusing with the jumble of characters that they just constantly flip through, but it was short. It kind of held my attention span. It was just a decent fighting game story. It's nothing like the Injustice or Mortal Kombat stories. It's just a kind of tacked on story that kind of fills the in-between of people fighting. The reason this is so low on my list compared to a lot of other games is they hit a lot of the costumes and customization under this weird like RNG dropping system. So say you want to get a costume for, I play Tina. So I do the arcade, I go through the whole arcade, and then usually you would just unlock it for playing on normal. There'd be a costume for playing it on hard. There'd be a costume for beating the survival. There'd be a costume for beating the time attack mode. But in this one they give you, like, depending on what difficulty you play on and what mode you're playing on, they'll give you like a certain amount of shards or like completion points that will randomly assign to a certain costume that you haven't unlocked. So you'll gain progress to that costume getting unlocked. The main issue is it's random, so you can't choose what costumes to put it into. It just randomly will assort it, so you end up with a bunch of costumes that you have some progress in, but you haven't really unlocked any. So it's kind of a pain in the ass to unlock any costumes that you really want. Overall, it's just a decent fighting game. Combat mechanics are still great, and I think the Dead or Alive series is one of those ones that you can just pick up, play for a bit, feel like you're doing pretty good because the combos are pretty short. I would say this game's pretty good if you're looking for a fighting game and just need that itch crave for a decent fighter. Alright, next up is a game that a lot of people suggested that I finally get to playing, and that is Marvel Spider-Man. This is just the inverse cover for it. So this game, I think, is a game that does a lot of things really, really well, and a lot of things kind of iffy. For me, the combat mechanics and the web slinging are some of the best I've ever experienced, and I think they do the best job of finally nailing the kind of feeling that you would get with the web swinging, and the combat mechanics just a rip of Arkham. But I think the web mechanics and the kind of different abilities you get through the suit power-ups really diversify it a bit compared to the Arkham games, so it doesn't feel as rinse and repeat as just copying the Arkham games over. The story in this game's okay. It's very generic and really easy to see what's coming. And there's no real big twists. Like the big twists you see like glimpses of obviously what's going to happen like 2 missions before, and it's just kind of a generic, oh, this person looks good, oh look, they're a bad guy, oh my gosh. Then you go take down him, and then, oh look, that person who is clearly a bad guy, oh look, they're a bad guy too, and then you fight them. So the story was kind of not interesting in terms of that point. The other thing that was a little disappointing for me was the boss fights. There's a lot of different boss fights with a lot of famous Spider-Man characters in this, and the boss fights really break down to figure out the pattern of which way they're going to attack, dodge, shoot your webs at them, always the same web attack, jump in with triangle, and then just press square on them until they go down. And then rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat until you win the boss fight. There's not a lot of creativity used to make the boss fights feel unique and different, especially with playing all the cool powers that the Spider-Man bad guys have, that they just completely voided in any of these real battles. What does bring the game back for me, and why I still really enjoyed playing this game, 1, combat, 2, web swinging, and also just the feel of the city. The city's vast. There's no loading in between web swinging to certain parts of the city. There's a lot of different crimes that happen, so there's always something to do. There's a lot of scavenging things. There's a bunch of little side quests that kind of do get a little tedious, but if you mix them up well enough, it just keeps it kind of interesting. And if you do a couple in between each story mission, it kind of freshens up the pacing of the game and kind of gives you some stuff to do on the side. Also, if you're looking for an easy platinum, this is a pretty easy platinum to get. And overall, it's just a pretty fun game with some really good combat mechanics and really nails the essence of Spider-Man. And I think another thing is the voice acting in this game is great. I think they did a really good job of capturing the new age Spider-Man that they're trying to go for in this. And the suit customization with all the different variety of suits and a lot of cool callbacks to the comic. Alright, coming in at number 8 is the only PS3 game I actually played through this year. As I said before, I've really been on a PS4 kick with all the games going on sale, and there's still some games in 2020 that I really wanted to pick up, which I'll cover a little later in the video. So I really haven't focused on the PS3 too much. I'm hoping to switch that back this year and try to pick up some games with the PS3 and continue growing my collection for that. But the one I did play through this year was actually pretty decent, and that's Inversion. But what this game is basically takes the Gears of War combat and basically adds a little element to it. You basically get like different grab weapons and kind of this like grab gun that you can change the gravity in certain places. You can alter it to go down, to go up. You can throw things with it. Also later in the game, there's a bunch of parts where you use it to like fly to certain objectives and kind of use it to boost up to higher spots to progress in the game. And there's some floaty around like combat sections that are really weird, but add a different variety to the game. While this game would just be a solid third-person shooter with just how it plays, it's very similar to Gears of War, so it's decent fun to play through if you're just big into cover shooters or into third-person shooters at all. What I think takes this game up a little bit to make it a solid shooter is the boss mechanics and the boss fights. I think in this game there's a lot of variety of bosses, and each of them require their own kind of twist of using the grav weapon to help defeat them a lot quicker. There's these certain big behemoth guys that you have to pick up magma with gravity and then shoot it at them to burn and stun them, will then allow you to do a bunch of damage on them, and then kind of rinse and repeating that. There's certain ones where barrels are being used and you kind of toss them or use them as shields. There's ones where you can bring down pillars to drop rocks from the ceilings on people. So there's a lot of different uses for the grav weapons, and it kind of mixes it up from just being a normal cover shooter. Overall, this game is just as solid as a third-person cover shooter as you can get. The third-person cover shooting mechanics are very good and very solid, and the grab mechanics just kind of make it a little more different and a little spicier compared to your average third-person cover shooter. So I would recommend this game if you're into third-person cover shooters at all, or just kind of looking for a fun co-op game to play, because I'm pretty sure this is co-op. Oh, and I just read the back of the box. It is co-op, but not couch co-op, so it's online network co-op. Alright, coming at number 7 It is a game that I think surprised me the most, just because it comes from a genre I don't normally get into, and that's Catherine. So this is the full body one. This is basically just a remake and kind of Ultimate Edition with all the DLC for the PS4. This game originally came out on the PS3, and this is just kind of their updated version of it. So what Catherine is, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like a, I'm going to say, visual novel mixed with a puzzle game. So basically, you play as this guy who has a girlfriend who's about to be his fiance, and a bunch of other different girls, well, two others, come into relationships and start flirting with him. And then he has these weird, twisted dreams where he has to go through these different puzzles in order to get out of the dream, or else he's gonna die. And it kind of weirdly twists it all together, so the puzzle mechanics and the actual puzzles blend into his real life issues. So the story is really what will carry this game for you if you're not into the puzzle mechanics. The story is actually very good, and each of the characters that you're introduced to this game really play their part in the story, and also are very unique perspectives and personalities. So the core puzzle mechanics itself are basically, there's a giant mountain of blocks, and you have to slide and maneuver the blocks out so you can make a one-by-one path all the way up to the top. There's different variety of blocks. There's certain ones that are heavy that you can't move. There's ones that will push up spikes when you step on them. There's ones that will break if you step on them too much. And there's ones that will jump you up like 2 stories. There's a bunch of different power-ups that you can get. So this game definitely has very deep puzzle mechanics. And later on, some of the later challenges get really hard, at least for somebody like me who's not good at puzzles, and required me to play through a couple times in order to finally get it without falling off the edge. In my opinion, what you're getting this game for, and why I enjoyed it so much, is one, the story. I thought the story was very unique. Again, the characters are really interesting and each have their own personalities that really elevate and add stuff to the story. And I think the game's puzzle mechanics were unique enough that I got interested in it, and easy enough at the start to pick up and start to learn. And then applying what you learned early on to the later ones, you can kind of slowly figure out how to do the harder puzzles if you're like me and are trash at puzzles, so it'll take you a little longer. But overall, I really enjoyed playing this game, and really kind of introduced me to the puzzle genre, because I've never really picked up puzzle games before this game. Alright, coming at number 6 is the first game that will be specifically from 2020. And it's a game that a lot of people won't put on their top 10s list, but I enjoy the series, I always have, and I always enjoy a good playthrough of the single player campaigns, and that is the Call of Duty franchise. So this is the newest ones, Call of Duty Cold War, and I'm basing this specifically on the campaign, because the multiplayer is just the same Call of Duty multiplayer. So if it was just the same Call of Duty multiplayer and the campaign was kind of bleh, I wouldn't put it on this list. But I actually really enjoyed the campaign of this game, and I think if you're into FPSs at all for single player playthroughs, you'll actually really enjoy this Call of Duty campaign. So I'm gonna get the obvious stuff out of the way. Call of Duty campaign, really good first person mechanics, some of the smoothest combat I think in a first person game ever. It just plays really well, the guns feel great, the AI is smart enough to kind of give you a challenge if you're on the higher difficulties, but if you're on the lower difficulties, it's kind of just that fair balance. What this game does different than a lot of other Call of Duty campaigns, and why I think this one is kind of the most, I don't know, one that breaks its boundaries a little more compared to a lot of the other Call of Duty games, is that it finally went for different endings. So in this game, you can't just get the same generic ending from making a bunch of different choices throughout the game. All your choices in terms of what you're doing on the side quests that they give you, or optional objectives, to what sides you choose at certain points in the game, to how you kind of maneuver and answer certain questions, will all determine what ending you get and what outcomes you get at the end, depending on which faction you're ending up going with. So this campaign is based in the Cold War, as the title suggests, and you're kind of a new like sleeper agent being added to a certain cell with sleeper agents, trying to work out and figure out what the Russians are planning and how to stop it. And it kind of kind of twists and kind of bends the reality of the situation partway through, and then it leads up to a bunch of different choices you're forced to make that will really decide who you end up allying with and who you end up, in Call of Duty fashion, just shooting them in the face. I don't want to give too much of the story away, because if I start talking about specific choices or twists in the game, it'll be very obvious when you're playing it which one's going to be the ones you're choosing and not choosing to go with. So I think this is a game that once it drops down in price, don't pay the full price if you're not playing the multiplayer and the zombies, which I actually think are pretty solid in this game. I think the zombies first map is one of the best I've played in recent memory. But anyways, the campaign, if you are going to get it for the campaign, and if you're into first person shooters, I would recommend it. I would say wait till it's about like $20 or $30 even, and you'll get your good playthrough out of it. And it's actually one of the first Call of Duty campaigns that has some replayability. By making different choices throughout the game, you can get I think it's like 4 different endings if I'm not mistaken. 2 huge different endings, and then I think there's 2 sub endings of each of them. So I think it's just one of those Call of Duties that kind of goes a little above and beyond what you expect from the Call of Duty series. Alright, so now we're getting to the top 5. These are games all here on up that I think are really great games, and I enjoyed heavily playing through them, and I would highly recommend any of these games to be picked up. If you haven't heard of these games or a little hesitant on picking any of these games up, I would personally give my recommendation to fully pick these up. These are great games. So the first one would be Nier Automata, or Automata, or whatever you say it. But this game is basically a third-person hack-and-slash game that you're playing as androids, and you're basically an android kind of army or like special agents or something like that are the last source of defense for humans, where robots have taken over planet Earth, and it's kind of this dystopian post-apocalyptic Earth that you're going to, and you're kind of discovering all the secrets, all the different societies that exist with the humans, androids, and the robots, and you're kind of going through figuring out how the robots took over, where exactly are the rest of the humans, and figuring out how the androids kind of tie into all this and how you and your characters tie into this whole story. What this game does great is the combat mechanics are very fluent. There's a really good dodging mechanics. It's very fast paced. There's a variety of different robot enemies and android enemies that you'll face that provide different combat challenges, and there's a lot of them that have certain weaknesses that other ones won't, so you have to learn to exploit and kind of maneuver your way here around these different robots and learn how to fight each one by itself. Another thing this game does great is the story. It's really good. There's a lot of different little side characters that you'll meet, and kind of really add into the whole universe, and the atmosphere and music that goes on in this game is really suits it and really helps you get into the mood of the game. It's kind of dark and atmospheric, but like twisted, not really dark as in like a horror game. It's just kind of that like twisted sense of like humanity that's left, and it does a really well job of portraying that in this game. The thing I enjoyed the most about this game is that the progression of what you learn throughout the game. So a lot of the stuff that you believe at the start won't kind of make sense in terms of how you believe them at the beginning, but they'll help you tie in and kind of expand on what you know at the end, and kind of everything you learn throughout this game all ties in at the end, and then you get a full picture of what actually happened throughout the story of this game and before and after of it. The way they relay the story to you is through 3 different campaigns. So the first one you'll play through 2B, and she's kind of like the basic campaign where you're getting through the understanding of the world, getting used to the combat mechanics, and it's kind of the fullest one that will introduce you to everybody and kind of gives you the base story to the game. Then you go through the 9S, which honestly has some hit or miss mechanics. The whole hacking into literally everything and playing this stupid shooty mini game all the time really gets a little repetitive, but you learn a lot about the story that you didn't know from 2B's playthrough, and he gives a decent new perspective on the same story. The third campaign playthrough, which you play as this kind of rebellious android who's kind of not with the main android system or network, and you kind of learn, that's where you kind of learn the whole story of the game, and everything kind of finally ties together. So there's a good variety of different combat mechanics, because they all play pretty separately, especially 9S compared to the other two. So it's a good break in the repetitiveness of the same combat, and the story and what you're learning throughout the game will really keep your interest throughout the game. And this is one of the first games I played through all different playthroughs to get the true ending of the game. I usually don't do that. So I would highly recommend this game to anybody who likes a deep story and some good third-person hack and slash combat mechanics. Alright, so coming at number 4 is my introduction to one of the series I'll definitely be keeping tabs on coming into the future, and there's a lot of games that I still have to pick up and play for it, and that is Yakuza Kiwami. So these games follow Kiryu. He's the main character. He's a Yakuza in the Japanese Yakuza back in, I forgot this game based in, I think it's the 1990s or something like that, and basically follows his betrayal from his clan and how he looks to redeem himself and redeem kind of his honor in the clan, and trying to figure out who set him up. So this game is very heavy on the combat mechanics, which in these games you get 3 different styles. You get Beast, Rush, and Brawler, and they kind of serve as your fast pace with dodging. Your Beast is your heavy hitter and really just about doing a lot of damage and getting some good grapples, and then the Brawler is kind of your mix of everything. The combat mechanics are some of the best I've played in a beat 'em up game in a while. It's made by the same people who made Fist of the North Star, so if you played that game and not the Yakuza games, it plays very similarly to that, which is kind of own take on it. So the 3 different styles add very unique takes on the combat system, so you get a different variety if you want to switch. Some enemies are more susceptible to certain styles, or you can just fully level up one of your favorite ones and just do a ton of damage because you're only leveling up one but making it super strong. So it's all up to you on how you want to spend your XP. And one of the great things about this game is the upgrading in this game. There's these huge trees for each of the 3 classes that will unlock you permanent stats. They'll unlock you more health permanently, or unlock certain different abilities and different extensions to your combos, or certain passive abilities for using a certain stance at a certain time. So there's a bunch of different variety of different combos and combat mechanics you'll be learning throughout the game to keep the combat fresh throughout. Where Yakuza shines though is in terms of its side quest and the city it makes. These games, similar to Fist of the North Star, have the serious tone of the main story being very serious, with some side quests having serious undertones. But a lot of the side quests and kind of mini games you get to play throughout the city are just very goofy and lighthearted, and really just add a really fun element to it, and really mix up the different elements of the fighting and create kind of a whole experience in it. There's karaoke, there's cabaret clubs where I'm pretty sure in this one's the one where you can date girls from the cabaret club. You can play darts, pool, bowling. So there's a lot of things in the city that will keep you entertained and kind of mix up the monotony of going through different just battle to battle to battle to battle. So overall, if you want a great game, good story, really good fighting mechanics, a lot of upgrading and replayability, and a really just live city that has a lot of different elements and mini games and activities that you can do that will keep you interested throughout the game. Like I put, I think 50 or 60 hours into this game when I fully completed it. So there's definitely a ton of stuff to do in this game. Alright, then coming in at number 3 is probably my favorite game that was released in 2020. And really, the only reason why it's not number 1 on this is because it's a remake. So I don't want to really put it up as a number 1 or 2 because it's not a original idea, is what I would say. And that is the Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remaster. These games are amazing. It's a combination of Pro Skater 1 and 2. And for those of you who haven't played the Pro Skater 1 and 2 games or any of the Tony Hawk games, they're basically skateboarding games that take a very arcadey and over-the-top approach to skateboarding. There are the real tricks that skaters do on an everyday basis. Just so you can extend them out into these huge, insane combos on these very elaborate maps that are made to just string together insane combos. It's just how fluent the motions are and how cool the combos feel to hit is one of the best things about these games. But what takes this game over the top of just being a remaster of 1 and 2 is that they added a ton of new content into this game. There's, I think, 6 or 7 new skaters. There's different unlocks you can get throughout the game. There's a bunch of different boards. There's a custom creator that they added a lot of new stuff to. You can play through individual campaigns of all the different characters. There's a full profile level that you can level up and gain different boards or shirts that you're able to unlock by increasing your level. There's multiplayer now, which you can do full 6-man lobby of playing different jam sessions, trick attacks, combo challenges, or graffiti. You can also do standard split screen, where you can play horse in all of the classic Tony Hawk game modes. They've also added built-in leaderboards for biggest score and the speedruns. And what I think really made this game so great for me is it kept the feeling of the original 1 and 2 and just made it a lot more smooth to play, upgraded the graphics, added a ton of new content, and just made it a lot more accessible and fun in the new era with the multiplayer and being able to play it with friends and the different customization and really just adding a lot more to a game that was already amazing. So if you're into the Tony Hawk games at all, or you wanted to try some of the skateboarding games, I would recommend this one to get into. It's very easy to pick up in terms of doing all the challenges on each of the courses and finishing the kind of campaign or kind of finishing all the maps. But to play it online and to be really good at the game takes a lot of time and practice, because there's a lot of people that have been playing like Thug Pro or some of the older skateboarding games that are insane in this game. So it's definitely one of those games, easy to learn, hard to master. So overall, this is one of my favorite games that I've been playing recently, and I play it all the time. So if I could highly recommend a game to play, it would be this one. Alright, so coming at number 2, this will come as kind of a shock in terms of I've already talked about this game and I've already played this game before, but I've played extra of this game, is how I would describe it. That's The Witcher 3. So specifically, I won't be talking about the base game in this game. I finally, in 2020, finally got to playing the DLC for this game, which in terms of how much content it gives you, I kind of based it as an entire game. So I put it second. Also why it's not first, because I felt it would be a little gimmicky to give DLC the first position on this. So there's 2 DLCs in this. There's the Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, if I'm not mistaken. The Hearts of Stone is one that's based in the current map of The Witcher and focuses on the story where you meet this kind of traveling group of, I don't know, bandits or kind of just ruffians that kind of just go by themselves doing things. And I honestly think the main story in this is some of the best The Witcher has to offer in terms of story. I think the Hearts and Stone main story is so good at kind of getting you into the story and really wanting you to grind out that entire story just to finish it, see where it leads off. And there's so many different unique elements to it and boss fights and different locations you go to that honestly it felt like one of the better story campaign parts that I played through in this game. And then there's the Blood and Wine story, which you go back to, I forget the name of it, but it's where Anna, the Duchess, is in her location, and you're sent there to help deal with a higher vampire that they're having issues with. And it adds a giant new section and a giant new part of the map for you, and it's complete with its own town, a bunch of different sub-stories, probably I'm gonna say 30 hours of new content. And just doing the sub-stories, there's a house that you're able to get, and you can upgrade that through different tournaments you win or different quests. They'll give you things you can add to your house. You can use your money to upgrade the house to make it look better, which will give you access to certain things you can do for free that you normally have to pay for. So there's just this one adds a lot more RPG elements to it is what I would say. Overall, I would say the main story is a little weaker than Hearts of Stone, but it's still amazing. It has one of my favorite parts, which is where you go into this fairy tale world partway through it, and just it's one of the most unique areas I've ever experienced in an RPG. And honestly, I think this area adds some of the most fun elements to the game, with the Knights tournament that you can join, new races, a bunch of different Gwent tournaments. There's a new Gwent tournament with a new Gwent deck that's actually really freaking strong, and it just adds so much more of the Witcher you love into a new area. Overall, these two DLCs are probably my favorite DLCs that I've ever played through, up there with Shivering Isles for Oblivion. And even if you haven't played The Witcher 3 and you're looking to get into it, I would highly recommend picking up one that comes with the full DLC experience, because it just adds so much good content to the game and really expands the story in this game. Alright, and last but not least, we have our number 1 spot, which goes to a game series I've already talked about in this list, but in terms of the 2 I've played so far, it's my favorite, and that is Yakuza 0. So what Yakuza 0 is the exact same as Yakuza Kiwami in terms of the main story and the base combat mechanics. You're also still playing as Kiryu, but in this one they add in, you're able to play as Goro Majima, who is part of a different Yakuza family and has a very unique story to him as well. He's kind of an outcast of his family due to some crimes he committed against the family, and he is basically sent away and isolated in this kind of cabaret club district, and using his kind of resources that he gains and connections he gains in that area, he's trying to escape that area and kind of figure out who set him up to take the fall for his kind of entrapment in that certain area. And throughout this one, Kiryu has his own story in the base city that you were already in Kiwami. It has the same elements where there's insanely good combat mechanics. Both characters have 3 different combat styles, so there's a ton of different upgrades and a ton of different variety to the gameplay that you'll unlock throughout playing. The game still has those amazing sub-stories and mini games that help balance it between the seriousness of some stories and side quests, and then the just goofy and over-the-top sub-stories that you run into in these games. And I think this game, compared to Kiwami, has the better sub-stories, which is one of the reasons I put it above Kiwami. The other thing that really separated this game from Kiwami for me is the businesses that you're able to run. So Kiryu runs a real estate business where he kind of slowly takes over Kamurocho, and it has its own sub-story and main story in it itself. And you're slowly taking over these districts, upgrading buildings, setting manager and securities for certain areas, kind of dealing with issues that arise in the real estate thing, and slowly taking out all the different moguls that are in the area that control the real estate market. While Goro Majima has probably my favorite, which is you run a cabaret club, which is basically you go through and hire a different bunch of girls from different clubs or different areas throughout the game, or through doing sub-stories, some will join your cabaret club, and then you upgrade them, have them host time with guests, and it's kind of like a, I'm going to say rock, paper, scissors mechanic, where certain guests will require or want certain things from girls, so like them to be funny and have a cute dress style, so you have to match them with, and that'll give you the most outcome for the money. It's a very simple mini game, but it has deep mechanics in which you get a little later on. If you haven't played these games, I would recommend either starting with Kiwami or Zero, because Zero takes place way before anything that's happened in any of the other games. That's kind of a prequel game, and Kiwami is the first one, so I'd recommend picking up either one. Either one's a great place to start. I just prefer Zero personally. Alright, so there you have it. That is my top 10 games I played through in 2020. Definitely let me know some of the games you guys played through in 2020, and if you stuck through the whole video, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and remember, everybody has nerdiness at their core.